Welcome to Presume Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 9 of ASP.NET MVC tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss generating hyperlinks using actionlink HTML helper. Please watch part 8 before proceeding with this video. Now, we want to retrieve the list of employees that are present in this table TBL employee, and then we want to display them on an employee list page. But then in the employee list page, I want to display only the names of the employees, and those names must be hyperlinks. So for example, when I click on mark name, I should redirect the user to the employee details page where we show the full details of the employee upon which we have clicked. For example, right here I clicked on Mark and I'm redirected to employee details page, and I can see Mark's full details here. So we have employee ID is 1, name Mark, gender is male, city is London. And then on this employee details page, I have another link here, back to list. So when I click on this hyperlink, then we want to redirect the user back to the employee list. So obviously, to achieve this, the first thing to do is to add an index action method to our employee controller class. So what is this index action method doing? Look at this. We are creating an instance of the employee context class, and then we are using the employees property that's present within the employee context class, which is going to return the list of employees back to us, and then we are passing that list to the view for rendering. Okay, let's see how to add this index action method to our employee controller class. So let's flip to Visual Studio. So we have the employee controller here. Let's go ahead and add an index action method. So let me copy this details method and then paste it there, and let's make the changes as required. So let's call this index, and we don't need any parameter for this action method, so let's get rid of the parameter. We need an instance of the employee context class, which is going to establish a connection to the database, and then we are using the employees property to retrieve the list of employees, and I am then going to convert that to list, and then we are going to create a list of employee object, and let's call this employees, and then let's hand this employees collection to the view for rendering. Now at the moment we don't have a view that can basically list the employees, so let's go ahead and add a view to our MVC project. And to do that, right click on the index action method. Let's capitalize I in index action method. So right click on your index action method and then select add view from the context menu. Look at this, the name of the view is index, and I'm going to use Razor View Engine, and we want to create a strongly typed view. Okay, and then my model class is going to be the employee object. Remember, we're going to return, we are going to give this list of employees to the view for rendering. So the model class is still going to be employee. Okay, and at the moment I'm actually selecting the scaffold template as empty. We'll talk about these scaffold templates in a later video session. So let's click add, which should add index.cshtml view to the employees folder. So I have the employee folder, our new view is added. Okay, now look at this. The first change that we have to do for this view is that look at the moment the model is one employee object, an employee object, but in fact what are we actually passing to the view? We are actually passing a list of employee objects. Okay, so I'm going to set the model as IEnumerable of employees, meaning a list of employees, because list implements IEnumerable interface. Alright, so what's the thing we have to do? Now look at the font style I'm using. Arial is the font family. So the first thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to use a divs tag. So div, and let's set the style is equal to font family as Arial. Alright. Okay. And then for the page I want the title to be employee list, so I'm going to set the title here as employee list. Let's copy that and also set the heading to employee list. Alright, so what we need to do now, we need a bulleted list or an unordered list. Okay, so let's go ahead and include an unordered list. That's the HTML. And then look at what we are doing here. Every employee's name is rendered as a list item within that unordered list. Okay, so we need, basically we need to loop through each employee. So how do we get access to the list? We have the model object here, which is going to receive the list of employees that is handed over by the controller. So I'm going to use a for each loop. So now from the HTML mode, I want to flip to C# code mode, and to do that I can use the @ symbol, this the razor syntax. So for each employee, so where is employee class present? That's a model class. An employee class is present in MVC demo.models. So let's go ahead and import this namespace so that we don't have to type the fully qualified name of the employee class every time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use using MVC model MVC demo.models, and within that namespace we have our employee class. So for each employee, let's call the object as employee. In where is the list of employees present? In the model. So I can simply say @model. So what we need to do, we need to loop through each employee object, and then we need to create a list item. So I'm going to create a list item. Okay, that's the opening and closing tag of the list item. And within this list item, we need to generate a hyperlink which we can click. And when I click on that hyperlink, we want to redirect the user to employee details page. So to generate the hyperlink, you can either hard code it, the string, like you can literally generate the anchor tag there. Instead of that, MVC provides HTML helpers. So I can use the HTML helper. So @HTML dot, there is a helper method actionlink. And look at the IntelliSense. Now to generate a hyperlink, what are the things that we need to know? So obviously we need to know the text, the link text. That's one thing. And the next one is the link to which you want to redirect the user when we click on that hyperlink. Okay, so minimum two things. Okay, so obviously if you look at this action link method, it has got them as parameters. The first thing is the link text. So the link text for us is going to be the name of the employee. So I'm going to say employee.name. Okay, and the next parameter, action name. So to which, when I click this hyperlink, we need to redirect the user to employee details page, and we need to fetch the employee details and then give them to another view which can render that. So which controller action method is actually doing the job of displaying the details of employees? We have this details action method. You give it the ID of an employee. This controller action method is going to retrieve that employee details and then hand them over to the view, and the details view that we have in this employee folder is going to render the details of that employee. So obviously we need to invoke this controller action method details. So the controller action method is going to be details. And then another important thing is that this method actually expects an input parameter as well, the ID of the employee. Okay, so how can I get access to the ID of the employee? You have the employee object with you. We can use the parameter employee, the property of that object, employee ID. Okay, and we need to pass it to this controller action method. And look at this, there is another parameter. There are several overloaded versions of this action link method. We have 10 overloaded versions. I'm going to use an overloaded version which takes these three parameters: the link text, the action method that we want to redirect the user when the user clicks on that hyperlink, and the root values, the parameters, if any. So I'm going to use this object initializer syntax here. And remember, the parameter name is actually ID. So I'm going to say new ID is equal to employee.employee ID. Okay, so this should generate the hyperlinks for us. Okay, so now let's go ahead and run this and see if we get the output that we expect. So let's navigate to employee controller, and within that index action method, so which should invoke the index action method within the employee controller class. And look at that, I get Mark, John, Mary and Mike, and I have a semicolon there. To get rid of that, we don't actually require the semicolon right here. So let's get rid of that, save that, let's rerun it. So we have the employee names. Now look at this, as I hover my mouse over the links on the status bar, you can actually see right here on the status bar, you can actually see the URL that the user will be redirected to. So I click on Mark, look at that, I am now redirected to this page, the employee details page. Look at that, I'm going to the employee controller details action method, and we are passing 1 as the parameter. Okay, now on this page I need to have another link which says back to list. Obviously the same idea, so I go back to the details view, and then after the table I'm going to use the HTML action link. So at HTML dot action link. Now I just need two parameters here, the link text and the action name. What's the link text that we want? Back to list. So that's what I'm going to specify here, back to list. And the next thing is, to which controller action method do we need to redirect the user? Index action method, which is going to list the employees. So that's it. And then just to kind of format this properly, let's actually run this and say, so I want to redirect the user to employee index page, and then I click on Mark. So I have this back to list there, I click on that link and I go back. I click on John, we have John details. And to format this properly, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set the style to area for the entire form, and to do that I'm going to use a div tag here and then set the style there, and then close the div tag, and we don't need the semicolon there. Let's run this now, and everything should be as it's on the slide. So let's go to the employee index action method. So we have the list of employees there. I click on Mary, I have Mary's details here. I click on back to list, and I am back on the employee list. On this slide you can find resources for ASP.NET, C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.